And then they really were getting butthurt over this thing where they were saying like, no, you do not need 51% consensus to do a 51% attack on Bitcoin. You technically need 33%. It's expensive as hell.
Yeah.
It's expensive as hell, or this whole thing where like, I mean, basically he was arguing that Bitcoin can be changed. And they were like, no, this is God's money. This can never be changed. It was a really backwards maxi talk. It was like pretty, it was pretty cringy sort of stuff. He was basically saying like someone can, if they really wanted to, they really could risk all their capital in BTC and nodes and stuff to actually try to.
But isn't that already been proven to be true? Like my understanding with Bitcoin is, there's a lot of game theory that's designed. Like I'm not an expert. I'll just give my understanding. I might be wrong, but I thought that like, okay, as far as someone who's logically just trying to make capital, like the game theory is set up in a way that it does incentivize, the network to continue and just be secured and incentivize, mining and everything. And it doesn't incentivize these sorts of attacks as far as just financially. Right. But you have to understand that sometimes there's larger things at play than finances. Like a certain country in a certain situation or for whatever reason, right? You can lose a lot of money in one area, but you're making it back in other ways. You can be making it back in political gain or who knows, right? Like you could be making it back because you're, shorting it or something, or you could be making it back because you have some other asset class or something else that you're promoting, or who knows, right? Like it's just good to be aware of the risk with Bitcoin. I mean, the fact is it hasn't been hacked in the history of Bitcoin. So far, it's been good. But I think if any person that like Richard has been in since the beginning, if he's giving a straightforward argument based on
definitely he is.
I mean, it's just kind of like, because that is ultimately like Bitcoin's biggest, like I think most Bitcoin maxis, like, or people that are really heavily believe in Bitcoin, like I do myself, your biggest concern is always like an attack or is always a hack like that. It seems like that is kind of like the only way that Bitcoin fails long term is some sort of catastrophic hack or, you could call it a hack or you could call like collusion of the miners somehow. But 33% is, I mean, it'd be hard to coordinate 33% of the network. Right. I mean, but it's possible, right? It's good to be aware that with enough resources and enough capital, I don't know. I mean, there's different things. I mean, I might be talking out of my ass. Like,
no, you're not talking out of your ass because.
But I think it's a lot more complex than that. Like that's correct. There are other factors. Like even if you do get a hold of a third of the network, I believe there's other kind of like fail-safe systems in place. Like so, in theory, I mean maybe, but in practice. I mean, there's a lot.
It's like and Richard said that like he was saying that it's not likely, but it's possible. They were saying it's impossible. No, he's like, no, dude, it actually is possible. Like, what are you talking
about? I think maybe it'd be interesting to hear it just because I think the people that really know their shit on the ins and outs of Bitcoin, like when it comes to those sorts of things, you don't need to understand necessarily that level as an investor. Like, it's good to understand the risks, but like to understand the specific way the code is formed and how it works, like all the ins and outs. And I mean, that doesn't, you don't necessarily have to know that, but I would say to me, like it's highly unlikely, but there is a possibility. I mean, obviously there's enough resources on the planet that if there was enough bodies that wanted, like if there was enough players that wanted to work together for whatever reason, I mean, 100% they could stop Bitcoin. I don't understand how anyone can say Bitcoin can't be stopped. To me, like it absolutely can be stopped. Like if you have multiple countries that decided to come together, like the biggest players on the planet, like if China, the US and Russia and all these major countries decided to stop Bitcoin, I mean, they have the military power, they have the resources. Like how could they could shut off the internet if they want. I don't know, they could stop Bitcoin. If that was their sole goal, they could stop Bitcoin. They would lose a lot of money. I'm sure they would lose a lot of reputation. Who knows all the other consequences.
It'd be dangerous basically for them to do it. Like it's sort of this whole thing. It's not like an easy like sort of no casualty or no risk sort of effect.
It would expose them as working together in a lot of ways and stuff. Like it's. Yeah. But I mean, they could absolutely stop Bitcoin. I just think at this point, the more players in that sort of field that accumulate Bitcoin, the less likely it's to happen. Just because there's a lot of wealthy people that hold it, and there's they have connections. So it's just kind of slowly getting the traditional system on board with Bitcoin, and I think they're going to take the route of regulation. I don't really think they're going to take the route trying to shut it down. I mean, if they wanted to shut it down, they could have done it already. And I just don't see why at this point it just would be kind of weird to do it. I mean, they could, but I mean,
my speculation always is the United States benefits more from crypto than like it's this weird sort of thing where like we're just barely getting now from the Biden administration that they're going to start giving a little more clarity on how they're going to regulate crypto in terms of taxes and stuff, because like people like goddamn good luck to you guys trying to file taxes on this shit. Holy fuck, it's hard. It's not like
even with all the programs and stuff, like, oh man, it just seems like just a nightmare to do.
Yeah, like if you plug in your transactions into any of these kind of apps and stuff to help you with taxes, it's like half wrong. At least it's like I still waste.
So what do you have to do? Like go through every, because I'm in the process of getting started with that myself. But I mean, it's kind of like the biggest pain probably in being in the space is doing your taxes. Just at least for now. But
it's really tough and stuff. And then too, like all we care about is like, you know, if we're gonna be taxed, we should be. If it's no taxation without representation. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you know, if we're going to be taxed on this stuff, we should be represented. But on top of that, we don't want to be overtaxed on these assets and stuff. Like if I ran for government and I ran for like president or whatever, or Congress, so if I'd be pushing a bill basically until crypto leaves and goes into the real world, or you do a certain amount of sales and stuff, it should not be taxed at all, basically.
Yeah, isn't that what they're talking about doing though, or isn't that part of the bill?
A bit of it. You know, they're always like kind of bittersweet because like the way they always do it is they always make a really reactionary bill, like holy, like we're gonna tax you 99%, 99%. What? There's no way. Then they backtrack it like. So you guys, we're only going to tax you now 39%. You see, okay, that's more fair. You got like,
yeah, it kind of started extreme. Everyone freaks out, and then they pull it back to a point where it's kind of like, okay, we never, yeah, they just want a middle ground with it. But yeah, it's probably what's going to